Hello, everyone. This is Laura from Keynnect, and we are back at it for another weekly freight market report. If you've been keeping an eye on the U.S. trucking industry, you know things just feel off, right? The usual ups and downs, those cycles we all expect in the freight market, they've been replaced by this really strange, really long calm. So today we're going to dive into this great freight standstill and try to figure out why the market is so stuck in neutral and what it's going to take to finally get it back in gear. And this quote just nails the feeling out there right now. Andrew Smith from Circle Logistics put it perfectly. Flat is a thing, cycles are just wishful thinking. This isn't just some temporary lull. For the folks on the road, this flatline has become the new normal, and it has been stretching on for what feels like an eternity in trucking years. But, and this is a big but, this is where the story gets really interesting. Because while the market feels totally flat, another part of the supply chain is screaming the complete opposite. We have record-breaking amounts of goods pouring into US ports. So how on earth can both of those things be true at the exact same time? This is the core puzzle we're going to unpack today. On one side, you've got stagnant, just stubbornly low rates for truckers. And on the other, you have this massive surge of imported goods that all need to get moved. It's a fundamental contradiction, and it's what defines the market right now. So just how flat is flat? Well, get this. The average national dry van spot rate, that's the price for hauling all our general stuff. It's changing by only a single penny per mile each week. A penny. I mean, that's practically a rounding error. It just shows you how little pricing power carriers have at the moment. And while those rates are basically frozen, here's the other side of that coin. In July alone, a record 2.73 million shipping containers landed on our shores. To put that into perspective, the Port of Los Angeles by itself broke a 117-year-old record for volume. So the goods are definitely here. So where is the disconnect? To solve this mystery, we've got to look a little closer. We have to get under the hood, because the market isn't just one giant thing. Nope, it's made up of different sectors, and each one is telling its own story. So let's get inside the rigs and see what's really happening in the three key parts of the trucking world. All right, so here's the quick breakdown. You've got your dry vans, which haul most of our everyday goods, and that market is just swimming in extra trucks, which keeps rates super low. Then you have reefers, refrigerated trucks. They're seeing some pockets of demand thanks to seasonal produce. And then there are flatbeds, moving construction and industrial materials, and that market's actually feeling pretty strong. The big takeaway here is that the pain is not being felt equally across the board. Now, to really see the difference between these sectors, there's a key number we need to look at, the load-to-truck ratio, or LTR. It's actually a pretty simple way to measure demand. It's just the number of available loads out there for every one available truck. So the higher the number, the more demand there is compared to the supply of trucks. And that ratio, well, it tells a wild story. Look at this. For every dry van, there are about 6 loads available. Okay, not bad. But for every single flatbed, there are 21 loads. 21! This shows us that while the overall market feels really loose, the flatbed sector is under some serious demand pressure. This is our first huge clue that the national average is hiding some very, very different stories. And that brings us to our deep dive. We're going to zoom right past those national numbers and look at 2 states that perfectly show just how different these stories can be. It's a tale of 2 very different freight markets, Texas versus Florida. So on one hand, you have Texas. It's an absolute freight powerhouse. It has a bit of everything, retail, oil, imports, and it actually led the entire country in freight volume growth last quarter. Pretty impressive. But then you've got Florida. It's a consumer-heavy state, which means way more full trucks drive in than drive out, and that creates this massive glut of available trucks. And Florida's market right now, man, it's facing a perfect storm. The state is already flooded with too many trucks, and a major source of its outbound freight, all that fresh produce, just took a historic nosedive. And when I say nosedive, I mean it. The most recent Florida citrus harvest was the smallest in over 100 years. A century! Think about that. An entire pillar of the state's refrigerated freight market has basically just crumbled, leaving even more reefer trucks sitting around, searching for loads that just aren't there. So what's the result? You get rates that are just breathtakingly low. A recent spot rate for a dry van going from Miami to Atlanta was just 51 cents a mile. That is so far below the cost of just the fuel, never mind operating the truck or paying the driver. It's a rate of pure desperation, taken just to get out of the state and hopefully onto a better lane. So the bottom line for truckers is this. A route through Texas offers stability. There's a really good chance you're going to find a profitable load both on your way in and on your way out. But a route into Florida? Yeah, it might pay great on the way down, but it often ends in a frantic search for any load at any price, just so you're not driving hundreds of miles home completely empty. Okay, so now that we've seen what's happening on the ground, let's zoom back out. We know the market is in this stalemate. So what are the big picture forces that could finally break it? What should we all be watching for on the horizon? Right now, the market is locked in this massive tug of war. On one side of the rope, you have this flood of excess capacity. I mean, even after a really tough couple of years, there are still 35% more active carriers on the road than before the pandemic. And pulling on the other side is the incredibly resilient American consumer, whose spending just keeps fueling that record wave of imports we talked about. So if you want to know which way this market is finally going to break, here are 4 key things to watch. First, the Fed. Will an interest rate cut get people investing and building again? That would be huge for flatbeds. Second, the housing market itself, especially single-family permits. Third, consumer confidence. Do people feel secure enough in their jobs to go out and make those big purchases? And finally, consumer spending. How much longer can people keep relying on credit to buy all those imported goods? And that leaves us with the final multi-billion-dollar question. The freight market is in a deadlock standoff between stubborn demand and just overwhelming supply. So the big question is, which one is going to give out first? Will the resilient American consumer actually manage to outspend this historic flood of excess trucks? The answer to that is going to determine the road ahead for the entire U.S. economy. If you loved this presentation and would like to watch more valuable content for the ins and outs of the trucking business in U.S., press like and follow our channel. This is Laura signing off. And remember, drivers, stay safe out there.